So hi, Brian. Could you please tell everyone watching what is a functional behavioural assessment? Because they might hear about these things, they might not know what it is. It's probably not as commonly used as a positive behavioural support plan or anything like that. So could you please explain what a functional behavioural assessment is?
Be happy to. That functional behavior assessment is the most important part of creating a treatment plan that's going to be effective. So we can talk for hours about what an FBA or functional behavioral assessment is, but in reality, there's no definition. There's no one exact model. There's a couple variables that we think of. So some interviews with families. We do observations. We collect some ABC data. So it's antecedent behavior consequence data. We have some specific indirect and direct measures that we look at. So there's a variety of tools, the functional assessment screening tool, the motivational assessment scale. Realistically, all these things are coming together so that we can try to find out why a person is doing what they're doing. It's outside the scope of this particular video, but there is a thing called a functional analysis, and functional analysis is an experimental method to identify. So you're having a test and control condition. You're subjecting the behavior to specific consequences to see what happens. So we talked about that allergy test in a previous video, and the functional analysis is that type of test. We subject the behavior to specific components. We see what it responds to, and then we treat for that. So when we talked in previous videos about attention maintained, escape maintained, sensory maintained, and tangible maintained behaviors, the functional assessment identifies what's maintaining this behavior. Is it attention? Is it escape? Is it tangible? And now we can treat that specific component. So functional behavior assessments, super important. Without the assessment to identify why a behavior is occurring, we're just guessing. And that's not the way we want to manage things. So PBS is based on identifying functions, treating them. Applied behavior analysis based on identifying the functions, treating those behaviors with those functions. So really important. We can talk for many hours about this, but just to keep it pretty clear, functional behavior assessment, very important. Looks to identify why a behavior is occurring.
And with the assessment that you've just mentioned about, almost creating the conditions where a behaviour might present so we can then know and isolate and support people better. And like you say, it's a really, really effective methodology, because you can really then get down to the nuts and bolts of exactly why that function is occurring for that specific behaviour. But when people apply that, it really needs to be people with expertise like yourself, other BCBAs, people, practitioners like myself that are really adept at doing it, because there's a lot of ethical considerations with that, isn't there?
Correct. Yeah, that's very good to note that. The experimental analysis has those considerations because we're causing that behavior to occur, right? And in reality, it's a much shorter assessment. We can turn it on, we can turn it off, we can show that we have control over this behavior and treat it. But without the proper training, without the proper knowledge, for example, let's say we have someone who's engaging in self-injurious behavior. We don't want to turn that behavior on and off, right? That behavior occurring once could be dangerous. So the FBA methodologies, those interviews, those questionnaires, they're less. We're not causing the behavior to happen, so they can be seen. It's quasi more ethical, but in reality, the functional analysis needs to be conducted by someone with significant training that's done that before. With supports, with somebody to monitor and things like that. So. Good point. We don't want to just read about it, a functional analysis, and then go try it. That has to be done by a professional, someone that's done it before, that has training in it. But the other methodologies, the ABC data collection, those can be helpful, and anybody can do those. We can collect the data. We can look to see what's happening in the environment, and that's better than just guessing. We don't want to treat every behavior as escape or every behavior as attention. We really want to focus to the as much training as we have, and as many people as we can gather support from to identify why that behavior is occurring.
Sorry, very, very last thing. You mentioned earlier in this segment around the motivational assessment scale. And what I'm going to do is put a link for parents and people to a copy of the MAS, the motivational assessment scale, so they can use it and hopefully use it to start identifying behaviours of concern that their young person or their family member might have. And I guess the most important thing when doing a an MAS is that it's behaviour specific, isn't it? So for each separate behaviour, when you're doing a motivational assessment scale, you do a separate mass because because each behaviour serves its own function. You know, you might have one behaviour presenting that serves an escape function. You might have another behaviour that serves a tangible function. So every mass is behaviour specific, isn't it? In terms of how you do that form.
That's correct. Yep. It's the tough part is that the questions are specific towards one behavior, but you could, parents and caregivers and myself included, sometimes we begin to lump things together. So you're right. When you're looking through it, you want to really look at this. The behavior we're looking at is tantrum, and tantrums that occur, you know, when we present work to Johnny. So we're looking at something very specific. We don't want to look at tantrums and ripping papers up and yelling out in class. Those could all be different functions. So you're right. It's keeping in mind these are looking at one specific behavior. We might do 3 or 4 MASs. We might do 3 or 4 different interviews. We'll collect ABC data on 3 or 4 separate behaviors. But like you said, we're looking at single behaviors, single functions, and treating those that way. That's an excellent point.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Brian.